Project Search.
Hi, everybody. It's Danny again. Today, I'll be talking with you about taking time off from work and the correct way to do that. So, you'll hear different terminology uh, on this topic, such as leave of absence and some other things, and we will be talking about that later on. But for today, I want to focus on the steps you need to take in order to get the time off from work that you want or need and do it in a way that you will stay in good standing with your employer. In other words, not get yourself into any kind of trouble. All right, so I'm going to show you the presentation and some examples, and I hope you learn a lot. Requesting time off. Part of the Project Search UTMC remote learning experience. Do you enjoy traveling? Do you like to take time to do fun things with friends and family? Do you have medical and dental appointments that you attend regularly? I'm sure you answered yes to these questions. However, you enrolled in Project Search because you want to get a job. That means that when you achieve your goal of employment, you will have to follow the correct procedures in order to miss time at work to travel, do fun things, and attend appointments. During this presentation, you will learn some common procedures that employers require their employees to complete before they can be excused from work. All right, so first thing, I have a question. Do you remember Cecil's story? So we talked about Cecil in connection with the idea of having good attendance at work, and his story was this. Cecil's brother invited Cecil to go on a trip to Scotland with him. Cecil has always been interested in going there. Ancestors of his lived in Scotland in the 18th century. The trip will begin in 4 months. If Cecil goes on the trip, he will miss 5 days of work. He currently has 10 days of vacation time available. His employer requires at least 1 month's notice for vacation requests of more than 2 consecutive days. All right, so we recently talked about Cecil's wish to join his brother on a trip to Scotland, and we determined that Cecil would be able to go on the trip if he requested time off in advance and his employer approved his request. All right, so what will Cecil need to do to seek approval for the time off? So he's going to need to complete a leave of absence form. Then he'll need to wait for approval from his supervisor. He should not assume that it will be approved. He has to wait and find out. Then if he does get that approval, he should start planning his trip. But be warned, do not spend money on tickets for travel, accommodation, admission to theme parks, etc. until after your request has been approved. You might not be able to get that money back. So in other words, if you plan a big trip before you've gotten approval to take that trip from work and they don't give you approval, you could lose a lot of money and not be able to go on your trip on top of it. All right, so now we're going to practice. So we're going to complete 2 time off request forms. One will be a request from Cecil to his employer for time off to take his trip. The other will be a Project Search request for time off for a medical appointment. The first one we're going to look at is something that will be similar to a time off request form that you would find at most employers. So it has some basic questions. So it asks for today's date. So we're going to go ahead and put today's date being 5/20/20. Employee's name. Okay, so our employee's name in this case, if we think back on our story, it is Cecil. We don't know his last name, so we're just going to say Cecil person. So now we need to make clear what we're asking for, which is days. So we're going to say an X there to indicate days, and the days that he's going to want off. So remember again, in our story, he has 4 months before the trip begins. So we're just going to say, what's 4 months from today? Well, that's going to be September. So we'll say his trip is going to be from September 20th until September 24th. So that's 5 days, the 20th, 21st, 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. So then we look below there, and they're asking for the reason for the request. And it is, in fact, for vacation. So we'll put an X there to indicate that it's for vacation. So it even says here, I understand that this request is subject to approval by my employer, meaning that Cecil, he isn't just finished when he makes this request. He has to wait and see if his employer is going to say it's okay. He doesn't just assume that he's going on his trip. He has to wait for that approval. And so then he's going to sign, then he's going to put today's date, which is the 20th of May. So then down below there, you're going to see this section titled Employer's Decision. And you can see there, it says approved and rejected. And then the employer, probably Cecil's supervisor, is going to sign down here and date it. Now, when Cecil gets this form back, he'll be able to tell whether it's okay for him to go ahead and plan his trip or if he's going to have to plan to do something different at a different time. All right, next I want to show you the project search request for time off and excused absence form. They're combined for project search. So the next time that you know you have a doctor's appointment, a dental appointment, something coming up that you really want to do that perhaps is a family event or a trip somewhere, then you can fill out this form and I'll have them in the project search office for you to take one when you need it. Now, I do ask for a 2-week notice. So you're going to put your name and the day's date that you're making the request. So it needs to be at least 2 weeks before the date that you're going to put on this next line, which is the date of absence. And then you have your reason. So we have illness, medical appointment, and so on. And then we have a section that asks if you have documentation. Basically, most of the time when we say documentation, we mean like a doctor's note or note from a medical professional explaining that your absence was not something avoidable, that you really did need to stay out of work. So now let's look at a completed time off request form from a project search intern. Now this is not an actual intern. This is someone we made up named Guy Person. And he has put in the request on the 19th of May for the 2nd of June, which that's okay so far because it is basically 2 weeks notice. So he's good there. Indicated that there's a medical dental therapy appointment and that he will be bringing in documentation, meaning a doctor's note, and then Guy Person has signed the document. And then if you look down at the next box, I have approved it. And so now it's been approved. Those were just a couple of examples of requesting time off for different situations. There can be others, of course. I just wanted to get you all to get a look at what the forms tend to look like and the kinds of information that you're going to need to have. And I really wanted to emphasize that 2-week notice part. So Let's think. What do you think? Will you be able to request time off the next time you have an appointment or want to take a vacation? All right, some key things to remember. Request time off at least 2 weeks in advance. Don't spend money on a trip until the request is approved, and make sure you have time off to use. One of the things that we will be discussing soon is the fact that you really only get a certain amount of time that you can take away from work. Usually, a business will do that on the calendar year, meaning January through December, you get a certain number of days that you can take for paid or unpaid leave. And then after that, you can start getting some negative consequences. So we'll get into that soon. And I don't have the day off today, so I'm going to continue working. So I better get back to it. See you later. Goodbye.